There is something quietly fascinating about the pull of nonsense, the way absurd content wraps around the mind like warm fog. Tonight, as you drift off, let yourself wonder why. We will wander slowly through the history of the word brainrot, beginning before the internet existed. There is a word that has been everywhere lately. You have probably seen it in headlines, heard it in conversation, maybe even used it yourself without thinking too much about where it came from. Brainrot. A word that feels so entirely of this moment, born from screens and short clips and the restless scroll of an endless feed. And yet, if you trace it carefully, if you follow it back through time the way you might follow a quiet stream back to its source, you arrive somewhere unexpected. You arrive at the shores of a small pond in Massachusetts in the year 1854, in the pages of a book written by a man who had never seen a smartphone, had never experienced a notification, and yet somehow understood the feeling precisely. His name was Henry David Thoreau, and in his book Walden, a book about leaving ordinary life behind and living simply in the woods, he wrote something that reads almost like a warning sent forward in time. He was frustrated, as he often was, with what he saw as society's preference for easy ideas over difficult ones, for the comfortable and the familiar over the genuinely nourishing, and so he reached for a striking image. He described this tendency, this cultural hunger for shallow things, as a kind of rot. A rot of the mind. Brain rot, he called it. His exact words were pointed and deliberate. He lamented that England tried to cure the potato rot, but that no one worried about the brain rot which prevailed so much more widely and fatally. Read that again slowly, if you like. No one worried about the brain rot which prevailed so much more widely and fatally. Thoreau was not writing about memes or algorithms. He was writing about the tendency to reach for what is easy, to let the mind grow soft on a diet of ideas that require no effort, no resistance, no real engagement. He was writing about what happens to the interior life of a person and of a culture when it stops demanding anything difficult of itself. The metaphor is a fungal one, which is fitting. Rot does not arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, spreads quietly, and by the time you notice it, it has already gone quite deep. It is a strange and somewhat comforting thing, actually, to realize that the feeling we associate so strongly with the internet age was already being named and described 170 years ago. There is something in that which loosens the grip of panic a little. Thoreau was not describing a new weakness in human beings. He was describing something much older. A perennial tension between depth and ease, between the nourishing and the merely pleasant, between the kind of thinking that builds you up and the kind that simply fills the hours. He went to the woods, famously, to live deliberately. That phrase has become so well known, it has almost lost its weight. But what he meant was something quite specific. He meant that he wanted to meet his life face to face, without distraction, without the noise of a culture that was, in his view, always offering something to consume and very little to truly absorb. He wanted to know what it felt like to be genuinely present with a thought, to follow it where it led, to let it become something real. Walden Pond, where he built his small cabin and spent 2 years, is still there. You can visit it. It is quiet, ringed with trees, the water a deep and changeable grey-green. Standing at its edge, it is not hard to imagine Thoreau noticing the same thing we notice now, the pull toward distraction, the way the mind reaches for something easier when the present moment asks too much of it. The particular distractions were different: newspapers, gossip, the noise of town life. But the pull itself was the same. And so the word he coined, or perhaps the word he was the first to write down, because words rarely have a single inventor, sat quietly in the pages of Walden for over a century and a half. It was there waiting in the way that the right word always waits for the right moment to be needed again. Most people who used Walden as a reference, who cited Thoreau in essays about nature or simplicity, or the examined life, walked right past it. It was not the sentence anyone quoted at graduation, and then, gradually, something shifted. A new kind of content arrived, a new kind of consumption. The feeds grew shorter and faster. The clips became loops. The algorithm learned with extraordinary precision what would keep a person watching for just a few more seconds, and then a few more after that, and people began reaching, half-joking, for a word to describe the particular fog that descended after an hour of this. A word for the feeling of having consumed a great deal and somehow being emptier for it. Somewhere along the way, someone found Thoreau's word, or perhaps several people found it independently, the way words sometimes bubble up from the cultural underground without a single traceable source. Either way, by the time Oxford named it one of their words of the year in 2024, Brainrot had completed a remarkable journey from a grievance written in solitude beside a pond, through a century and a half of near silence, to a headline that felt entirely of the present. The phrase is old, but the experience it now names is genuinely new, and understanding the difference between those two things, the ancient tendency and the modern form it has taken, is exactly where we are heading next. There is something quietly remarkable about the moment a piece of slang makes it into a dictionary. It is not the kind of thing that happens overnight. Words are watched for years, tracked across newspapers and social media posts and academic papers and casual conversations before anyone decides that yes, this one has earned its place. So when Oxford University Press announced that their 2024 word of the year was brainrot, it was worth pausing for a moment to consider what that decision actually meant, Oxford chooses its word of the year through a careful process. Lexicographers and language researchers monitor how language is shifting in real time, looking not just for words that are new, but for words that seem to be carrying something, some idea or feeling or cultural mood that the existing vocabulary has not quite managed to hold. And in 2024, the word that kept surfacing, that kept appearing in more and more places, that showed a staggering 230% increase in usage compared to the year before, was Brainrot. 230%. That is not a gentle uptick. That is a word that was suddenly everywhere, tumbling out of people's mouths and appearing in captions and comment sections and think pieces at a rate that suggested it had been waiting to be used, that it had been filling a gap people had not quite realized was there. What makes this particularly interesting is who was using it and how. The term was not being deployed as an insult lobbed from one generation at another. It was not appearing primarily in concerned op-eds written by people worried about the state of modern attention spans. Instead, it was being used most heavily by young people, by the very generation that spends the most time inside the content ecosystems the word is meant to describe. They were using it about themselves, about their own habits, their own feeds, their own late-night spirals through strange corners of the internet. There is something worth sitting with in that observation. When a generation coins a term for the way the internet makes their mind feel, and then uses that term constantly, almost affectionately, that is not simply a complaint, it is something more nuanced. It is a form of naming, and naming is almost always the first step toward understanding. Think of it like this. Imagine you have been experiencing a low hum in a room for so long that you stopped consciously noticing it. One day someone gives the hum a name, and suddenly you can hear it again, not because it got louder, but because language has given you a handle to hold it with. Brainrot worked a little like that. It gave people a shared word for a shared sensation, the slightly foggy, slightly overstimulated feeling of having consumed too much rapid-fire content, of having spent an hour watching 30-second clips and emerging blinking into the real world feeling somehow both full and empty at once. Oxford described the word as capturing a collective unease about the state of discourse and the impact of excessive online consumption. And yet, crucially, the word also carries a particular lightness. It is not clinical. It is not medicalized. It has a kind of warmth to it, even a self-deprecating humor. People say they have brain rot the way they might say they have been staying up too late, with a gentle, rueful smile rather than genuine alarm. This duality is part of what made it such an apt cultural marker. The word holds two things at once: a real observation about something that feels subtly wrong, and a softness that keeps the observation from tipping into panic. It is how a lot of people actually relate to their relationship with the internet, not with horror, but with a kind of bemused recognition. The 2024 shortlist that Oxford considered alongside Brainrot is itself a kind of portrait of the year. Words like demure, which exploded across social media as a style of self-presentation, and dynamic pricing, which entered everyday vocabulary amid widespread frustration with ticket costs, and romantasy, a genre label that publishing had been reaching toward for a while. Each of those words tells a little story, but Brainrot was the one that seemed to reach beyond a trend or an event, the one that was pointing at something about how life actually feels right now, at the texture of daily attention and the way that texture has been quietly changing. And here is what is perhaps most telling of all. The word is centuries old, at least in form. The earliest recorded uses of brainrot as a concept date back to the 19th century, when Henry David Thoreau used it in a different context entirely to describe a kind of intellectual laziness he worried was spreading through society. The fact that a Victorian-era lament about shallow thinking has been quietly revived and entirely transformed to describe the very specific experience of algorithmic content loops, that is a kind of cultural rhyme that is hard to ignore. Language tends to find the shapes it needs, and right now, something about the way we spend our attention online needed a name that was honest but not harsh, descriptive but not despairing. Brainrot became that name. And now that we have named the feeling, it seems worth asking a quieter question. What is actually happening inside us when we fall into it? What is it that makes those particular loops of content so difficult to step away from, so easy to return to, so strangely satisfying even when they leave us feeling a little hollow? The answer, it turns out, has less to do with willpower than with the quiet, ancient machinery of the brain itself. There is a small molecule in your brain that has, in many ways, quietly shaped the way you spend your evenings. It does not announce itself. You will not feel it arrive. But it is there, working in the background, nudging you gently toward the next thing, and the next, and the one after that. Its name is dopamine, and understanding it even a little can help you make sense of why short, strange, effortless content feels so difficult to put down. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that description is only partly right, and the more accurate version is actually more interesting. Dopamine is less about pleasure itself and more about the anticipation of pleasure. It is the brain's way of saying, something good might be coming. Pay attention. Reach out. Try again. Think of it like a lighthouse beam sweeping across a foggy harbor. The light is not the destination. It does not tell you what the treasure is or whether you will find it at all. It simply pulses rhythmically, pointing you in a direction, keeping your attention oriented toward the water rather than away from it. Dopamine works in much the same way. It fires not when you receive the reward, but when you sense that a reward might be near. This distinction matters more than it might seem at first. Because if dopamine was simply about pleasure received, you would feel it most strongly after a satisfying experience and then settle quietly into contentment. But that is not quite how it behaves. It tends to peak in the moment of seeking, in the moment of reaching, in the breath just before something happens. And this means the brain is subtly, gently wired not just to enjoy good things, but to keep moving toward them. Now consider what happens when you encounter a very short piece of content, a funny clip, an absurd image, a moment of unexpected chaos in an otherwise ordinary scene. The clip is brief, maybe 10 seconds, maybe 30. It delivers a small burst of novelty, something unexpected, something mildly surprising. The brain registers that burst the way it registers any novel stimulus, with a small, quiet release of dopamine. Not a flood. Not an overwhelming wave, just a gentle rise like a single note played on a soft piano key. And then the clip ends. And the next one begins. Here's where something subtle and important happens, because the brain has now learned something. It has learned, through that small dopamine response, that this stream of content is a source of occasional pleasant surprises. It does not know when the next good one will come. It does not know if the next clip will be funny or strange or unexpectedly beautiful. But it knows that sometimes they are, and that uncertainty, that gentle unpredictability, is exactly the kind of condition under which the dopamine system becomes most active. Psychologists have a name for this pattern. It is called variable reinforcement, and it is one of the most reliably engaging patterns the brain knows. When rewards arrive on a fixed, predictable schedule, the dopamine response tends to diminish over time. You begin to anticipate the rewards so precisely that the element of surprise disappears, and without surprise, the signal loses some of its pull. But when rewards are variable, when sometimes the next thing is wonderful, and sometimes it is merely ordinary, and occasionally it is unexpectedly strange, the dopamine system stays engaged. It keeps scanning. It keeps reaching. It does not know when to stop, because it has not yet found the reliable pattern that would tell it the stream has run dry. This is not a flaw in the system. It is a feature of a brain designed to learn. In an earlier context, this same mechanism would have kept our ancestors attentive and curious in environments where food, danger, and opportunity were distributed unevenly across the landscape. The brain that could stay alert in the face of unpredictable rewards was often the brain that survived. But in the context of a scrolling feed filled with short clips, that same mechanism encounters something it was not quite shaped to handle, an environment where the rewards are effectively infinite and the cost of continuing is nearly zero. There is no physical effort. There is no long walk home. The next possibility is always just a small motion away. And so the ancient, elegant machinery of anticipation simply continues doing what it was always meant to do. It is worth sitting with that for a moment, not with judgment, but with a kind of gentle curiosity. You are not weak for finding it hard to stop. Your brain is doing something it was always very good at. It is learning. It is seeking. It is following the faint light of possible reward through a landscape that has been carefully designed to keep that light always visible, always just ahead. The dopamine system does not tire easily. It does not grow bored with seeking. And so quietly, without you quite deciding to, you find yourself still watching, still curious, still reaching for whatever the next moment might bring. In the deeper architecture of the brain, this seeking lives inside a particular circuit, a network of structures connected to each other in a long looping pathway that has been shaping behavior far longer than any screen has existed. That pathway, and what happens when it meets the particular demands of modern content, is where we drift next. Deep inside the brain, tucked beneath the cortex in a region most of us never think about, there is a small cluster of cells that has been quietly shaping human behavior for hundreds of millions of years. It is called the ventral tegmental area, a modest name for something rather remarkable. This little structure, no larger than a chickpea, is the origin point of one of the brain's most powerful chemical rivers. And when you find yourself reaching for your phone one more time, even when you meant to put it down, it is this tiny region that deserves some of the credit. The ventral tegmental area, or VTA, is where dopamine is produced. Not all of it. The brain makes dopamine in several places, but the VTA is the source of the Mesolimbic pathway, a long, delicate arc of neurons that carries dopamine from its birthplace forward into a structure called the nucleus accumbens. Think of the nucleus accumbens as a small amphitheater nestled just behind your eyes, waiting to receive the signal. When dopamine arrives there, the experience is not exactly pleasure, it is something subtler. It is the feeling of leaning forward, of anticipation, of the world saying softly, something good might happen. This distinction matters. Dopamine, as researchers now understand it, is less about reward itself and more about the prediction of reward. It is the soft glow before the light. It is the moment just before you open a gift, when the outcome is still unknown and the mind is quietly humming with possibility. The nucleus accumbens is where that hum is felt. Over the past 2 decades, neuroimaging technology, particularly functional MRI, which measures blood flow in the brain as a proxy for neural activity, has allowed researchers to watch this system in motion. And what they have found when studying how people interact with social media and short-form video is quietly illuminating. When participants in these studies scroll through content that is personalized to them, content curated by an algorithm that has learned their preferences over time, the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens light up in ways that are measurable, consistent, and strikingly familiar. Familiar because neuroscientists have seen this pattern before. The same mesolimbic pathway, the same VTA2 accumbens circuit, activates during gambling. It activates in response to unexpected monetary rewards. It has been observed in studies of substance use, of compulsive eating, of video games designed to deliver unpredictable prizes. This is not to say that scrolling through Brainrot videos is identical to these experiences. But it does suggest that the underlying circuitry is the same. The brain does not always distinguish clearly between categories of reward. It recognizes the structural shape of anticipation, and it responds. What makes personalized content particularly effective at engaging this pathway is a quality the algorithm introduces almost incidentally: variety. Each item in the feed is different from the last. Some are funny. Some are strange. Some are dull. The sequence is not predictable. And that unpredictability is, as it turns out, exactly what the mesolimbic system finds most activating. When reward is guaranteed, dopamine responds modestly. When reward is possible but uncertain, when the next item might be delightful or might be nothing in particular, the system becomes far more engaged. The anticipation is highest when the outcome is least certain. fMRI studies have shown that simply knowing a personalized feed is waiting activates preparatory dopaminergic responses even before the scrolling begins. The brain begins leaning forward before the phone is even unlocked. There is something almost poignant about that when you hold it gently in mind. The system is not broken. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do, scanning the environment for possible rewards, staying alert, staying ready. It is just that the environment has changed quite rapidly, and the ancient circuitry has not yet had time to adjust, and none of this happens in isolation. The mesolimbic pathway connects to the prefrontal cortex, the region associated with planning, self-regulation, and the ability to choose one action over another. When dopaminergic activity in the nucleus accumbens is high, signals to the prefrontal cortex can become somewhat quieter, not silenced, but softened. The part of you that intended to put the phone down at a reasonable hour is still there. It is simply a little harder to hear. Just then, neuroscientists are careful to note that this is not a pathological process in most people. The mesolimbic pathway is not a flaw. It is the reason you finish a project, pursue a relationship, bother to eat a good meal. It is woven through everything that feels meaningful or motivating. The capacity to become absorbed in a stream of strange, gentle videos is simply that same capacity running on a newer kind of input. Lying here now, there is something almost restful in knowing this. Your brain is not weak for being drawn toward novelty. It is ancient and curious and doing its best with the world as it finds it, a world full of small, unpredictable offerings arriving one after another. And it is that unpredictability, that carefully arranged uncertainty, that we will look at a little more closely next. Imagine a small machine. It has a handle on the side and a window at the front. And behind that window, symbols spin. You pull the handle. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes a few coins fall. And sometimes, rarely, a small cascade of metal and sound pours out, and for a moment the world feels different. You did not know when you pulled which outcome was coming. That not knowing is the whole point. That soft suspension between action and result, that is where the machine has you. And it turns out your phone works the same way. Psychologists have a name for this. They call it a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. When a reward comes after a random and unpredictable number of actions, rather than a fixed and reliable one, the behavior that produces those actions becomes remarkably persistent, more persistent, in fact, than if the reward came every single time. The irregularity is not a flaw in the system. It is the mechanism. Burrhus Frederick Skinner, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, discovered this in the 1950s while studying pigeons in small chambers. He found that if a pigeon pressed a lever and sometimes received a pellet of food and sometimes did not, and if that sometimes followed no predictable pattern, the pigeon would press and press and press. Long after a pigeon trained on reliable rewards had stopped, the variable trained pigeon kept going. The uncertainty, in a strange way, was more motivating than the certainty. The not knowing kept the animal engaged in a way that knowing never could. We are, in this respect, not so different from the pigeons. When you swipe upward on a short video feed, you do not know what you will find. Maybe it will be dull, maybe it will be mildly interesting, and maybe just occasionally it will be something that makes you laugh, or think, or feel a small quiet surprise. You cannot predict which swipe will deliver that, so you keep swiping. The next one might be the one. The one after that might be better. The uncertainty is the engine. Designers of these platforms understand this, whether they articulate it in those terms or not. The feeds are not organized by quality. They are not arranged so that the best content comes first and you can stop once you have seen it. They are shuffled, sorted by an algorithm that is partly personalized and partly experimental, and the result is that no two scrolling sessions feel exactly the same. You are not reading a book, where the narrative builds towards something known. You are pulling a handle again and again into a gentle unknown. What is interesting is how little effort each pull requires. A book asks you to sit with difficulty, to follow an argument or a story over time, to hold things in mind. A swipe asks almost nothing, a flick of the thumb, a fraction of a second. The barrier to the next potential reward is essentially zero, which means there is almost no reason to stop between pulls. The slot machine of the old casinos at least required you to stand, to insert a coin, to physically pull a handle. The phone asks for less than the blink of an eye. And yet, despite, or perhaps because of, how easy it is, the engagement is real. The brain is genuinely present. Neuroscientists who study dopamine, the neurotransmitter most associated with anticipation and reward, have found that it fires most strongly not when a reward arrives, but in the moments just before an uncertain outcome is revealed. The spike comes in the suspense. The brain is not rewarding you for what you found. It is rewarding you for looking. It is encouraging the behavior of seeking, because in an environment where rewards are unpredictable, a creature that keeps seeking is more likely to survive than one that stops. This is very old machinery running in a very new context. The circuits that kept your ancestors foraging through a forest, uncertain whether the next thicket would hold berries or nothing, are the same circuits that keep you scrolling through a feed at midnight, uncertain whether the next video will be worth your attention. Evolution had no way to anticipate a world where the thicket was infinite and the berries were made of light. There is something almost tender about this, if you let yourself sit with it. You are not weak for finding the scroll compelling. You are not failing at some test of willpower. You are a creature whose attention was shaped by millions of years of genuine uncertainty, and someone has built a machine that speaks directly to that ancient part of you, quietly and continuously, in the language your nervous system has always understood. The pull is real. The suspense is real. The occasional small reward is real. Knowing this does not make the pull disappear, but it can change the texture of the experience. The way understanding why a song is catchy does not stop you from humming it, but does let you hear it a little differently. You are not being swept away. You are watching a very old reflex move through a very new landscape. And now, having looked at the machinery, at the schedule and the variable and the ancient circuitry beneath it all, it is worth turning toward the content itself, because the mechanism only explains why you keep pulling the handle. It does not quite explain why, of all the things the handle might deliver, so much of what captivates is so wonderfully, deliberately strange. That is a different kind of question, and it begins in the particular logic of the absurd. There is a theory of humor that has been around for a very long time. long before the internet, long before memes, long before anyone had ever typed the word brainrot in a sentence. The theory is simple, almost elegant. It says that we laugh and we smile and we feel that small warm spark of delight whenever we encounter something that violates what we expect, but only when that violation feels safe. When the surprise is a gift rather than a threat. Philosophers called this the incongruity theory of humor. The idea is that the mind is always quietly predicting. It builds a model of how things should go, what should come next, what belongs next to what. And when that model is gently broken, when the next thing turns out to be the wrong thing, the unexpected thing, the thing that has no business being there, the brain notices the gap. It registers the mismatch. And if there is no danger attached to that mismatch, if it is harmless and playful, something curious happens. The brain finds it pleasurable. The incongruity becomes a small delight. Think of it like a locked door with no building attached. Your mind reaches for the logic, the context, the reason the door exists, and finds nothing on the other side. That gap between expectation and reality, that gentle collision, that is where the smile lives. Now consider what a brainrot meme actually is. Consider the images of medieval paintings where the figures have been given modern dialogue. Consider the videos where a beloved animated character speaks in a voice completely wrong for them, saying something completely wrong for any context at all. Consider the absurdist scenarios: a dog at a desk during a fire, calmly drinking coffee. A cat with a spinning newspaper headline about nothing. A phrase like Skibidi or Riz, or the deeply strange NPC trend where people filmed themselves speaking in clipped, looping dialogue as though controlled by game code. Every one of these is built from incongruity. Every one of them takes two things that do not belong together and places them side by side, the medieval and the modern, the serious and the trivial, the human and the robotic, the beautiful and the absurd. Your brain's internal model says these do not coexist. And then it looks again and sees that they do, and the gap between those two recognitions, that tiny, almost imperceptible pause, is where the humor lives. Researchers who study humor have noted that incongruity alone is not enough. The gap has to be resolved, or at least feel resolvable, in a way that is non-threatening. If the mismatch is frightening or confusing beyond a certain threshold, the brain does not find it funny. It finds it unsettling. But if the mismatch is small enough, silly enough, safe enough, the brain shifts into a different mode, a kind of play mode. And in play mode, encountering something that breaks the rules becomes not a problem to solve, but a pleasure to experience. This is part of why brainrot memes feel so light. They are almost entirely free of consequence. The incongruity is purely aesthetic, a collision of styles, references, tones, with no stakes attached. Nobody is harmed by the medieval knight discussing his riz. Nothing important is being broken. The only thing violated is expectation, and expectation, it turns out, quite enjoys being violated under the right conditions. There is also something worth noticing about the layering that happens in more elaborate brainrot content. It is not always a single incongruity. Often there are several stacked on top of one another. A meme might take an absurd premise and then add an absurd character speaking in an absurd register about something entirely unrelated. Each layer is a new mismatch, a new small gap, and the brain, encountering them in sequence, keeps firing off those little recognition sparks, not quite laughter in the context of calm watching, but something softer. A kind of amused awareness, a sense that the world is being playfully disordered and that this is somehow fine. Some researchers think this is connected to why children love nonsense so much. Nursery rhymes full of impossible images. Animals speaking, teapots pouring, spoons running away with dishes. Children are actively building their models of how the world works, and nonsense gives them a safe way to test the edges of those models. To see what happens when things do not follow the rules. The rules bend, the world does not collapse, and that confirmation that things are sturdy enough to survive a little disorder is quietly reassuring. Maybe adults never fully grow out of that need. Maybe some part of us still enjoys the proof that our internal maps are solid enough to absorb a little absurdity without tearing. That the mind can hold a contradiction, smile at it, and move on. So when you find yourself grinning at something on a screen, something that makes no particular sense, something that should not be as amusing as it is, there is a long, thoughtful tradition behind that grin. The philosophers were watching for it. The humor theorists were mapping it. The meme makers, perhaps without knowing any of this, were applying it instinctively. And there is still more to notice about why nonsense feels so good. Beyond the collision of ideas, beyond the gentle violation of expectation, there is another layer, something closer to the body, closer to pure sound, that the brain finds soothing and satisfying in its own quiet way. Say it slowly, just to yourself. Tralalero, tralala. Notice what happens in your mouth. The tongue touches the roof, the lips barely move, the sound just flows out like water over smooth stone. Nothing about it means anything, and yet something in you recognizes it, enjoys it, wants to say it again. There is a reason for that feeling, and it lives in a quiet part of your mind called the phonological loop. The phonological loop is one of the most elegant little mechanisms in all of human memory. It is not where facts are stored, not where names and faces live. It is something simpler and older than that. Think of it as a small room inside your working memory where sounds can be held briefly, like cupping water in your hands. The room can only hold a few seconds of sound at a time. But what it does with those sounds is something almost musical. It replays them. It turns them over. It listens to them again and again in a soft internal loop. When you hear a phone number read aloud and repeat it quietly to yourself until you can write it down, that is the phonological loop doing its work. When you are learning a new language and a word sounds strange at first, but slowly starts to feel familiar after hearing it many times, that too is the phonological loop gently wearing a groove into your memory. It is the part of the mind that was built for language before language was built for meaning. Before words had to carry ideas, the brain was already learning how to hold sounds. And this is where Tralalero Tralala becomes surprisingly interesting. Brainrot phrases like this one are, in a sense, designed, even if nobody consciously designed them, to satisfy the phonological loop perfectly. They are short enough to hold in that small room. They are rhythmically regular, which makes them easy to replay. They carry no semantic weight, no meaning to decode, no information that demands attention or evaluation. They are pure sound, packaged in a repeating pattern, and they slide into the loop like a hand into a glove that fits just right. This is why they stick. Not because they are clever or funny or profound, but because they are acoustically satisfying in a way that bypasses the thinking parts of the brain entirely. There is something deeper here too, something that might stir a softer kind of recognition. Before any of us knew what words meant, we made sounds like these. Long before syntax and grammar and the slow architecture of language settled into place, human infants play with sound the same way adults play with fidgets, not to accomplish anything, but for the pleasure of the doing itself. Babbling, linguists have observed, is universal across all human cultures. Every baby, regardless of the language spoken around them, goes through a stage of pure phonological delight. Consonants and vowels arranged into rhythms that go nowhere and mean nothing. Da-da-da-da. Ba-ba-ba-ba. The phonological loop spinning freely for the sheer joy of the spin. When you hear Tralalero Tralala and feel that tiny, inexplicable flicker of something warm, you might be reaching back toward that, toward an era before meaning was required. Before words had to earn their place by pointing at something real. This connection to childhood is not incidental. Psychologists who study nostalgia have found that the emotion is not only triggered by specific memories, but also by textures and patterns that feel like the past without pointing to anything in particular. A certain quality of afternoon light, the particular warmth of a familiar melody heard from another room, the sound of something nonsensical said with gentle conviction. These things do not remind us of a specific Tuesday or a named moment. They remind us of a way of being, unguarded, unhurried, not yet serious about the world. There is a softness in meaning-free repetition that serious, purposeful language cannot always reach. When every word has a job to do, language becomes a tool, efficient, direct. But when words carry no cargo, when they are just sound moving through the air in a pleasant shape, something loosens. The constant effort to decode and respond and understand can rest for a moment. This is in part why so many people find themselves unexpectedly soothed by brainrot content even when they cannot explain why. The brain, which spends so much of its waking life in the exhausting business of making meaning, encounters something that asks nothing of it and sighs. It is not stupidity, it is relief. The phonological loop keeps spinning its quiet cycles, satisfied at last with something that fits perfectly in its small ancient room. The sounds rise and fall. Tralalero, tralala. Again, again, until the edges of things go soft and the ordinary demands of the day feel very far away. And just as we find ourselves arriving at this gentle place, this old and wordless pleasure of sound without purpose, it is worth knowing that in 2025, something strange and surprisingly tender grew out of exactly this instinct, a whole surreal world that the internet started calling Italian brainrot, where nonsense took on shapes and names and creatures and became something altogether new. Early in 2025, something odd and gentle swept across the internet. It did not arrive with fanfare or a press release. It arrived the way most curious things do, quietly, sideways, through short videos posted by people who were simply amused. The phenomenon became known as Italian brainrot, though the name is a little misleading. It was not born in Italy, and it did not rot anyone's brain. At least not in any way that felt unpleasant. It was more accurately a wave of affectionate absurdity, a series of AI-generated creatures with invented Italian-sounding names, narrated in a warm synthesized voice, inhabiting a world where the rules of biology and sense had been quietly set aside. The character that started it all was called Tralalero Tralala. If you have not encountered him, picture this, a shark, but wearing shoes. Nike shoes specifically on each of its fins, strolling through some impossible landscape while an AI voice intones his name in a sing-songy cadence. That is the whole thing. That is the entire premise. And somehow it was irresistible. What made Tralalero Tralala work was not any single clever element. It was the combination, the visual strangeness of a sea creature in athletic footwear, the breezy confidence of the narration, and the name itself, which rolls off the tongue in a way that feels like it should mean something but absolutely does not. The name is the joke and the comfort at the same time. From that one character, a whole bestiary blossomed. Bombardiro Crocodilo appeared, a crocodile fused with a military aircraft, soaring improbably through illustrated skies. Cappuccino Assassino joined the lineup. Burr Patapim was introduced to the world. Each creature had a name with that same musical nonsense Italian rhythm, each one rendered in a slightly surreal visual style that suggested both a children's encyclopedia and a fever dream. The AI that generated these images had a particular aesthetic, slightly soft, slightly uncanny. The way illustrated content looks when a machine has absorbed thousands of visual references and is producing something adjacent to all of them without quite landing on any. The creatures had a dreamlike quality. They existed in a space between recognizable and wrong, which it turns out is a very comfortable space to visit when you are tired and your brain has loosened its grip on logic. The voiceovers added a crucial layer of warmth. Synthesized Italian narration, slightly formal, gently melodic, describing these absurd beings with the same seriousness you might expect from a nature documentary. There is something inherently soothing about that mismatch, the gravity of the delivery, the complete lack of gravity in the subject. It is the tonal equivalent of a very distinguished professor explaining at length and with great care why a crocodile might benefit from being a biplane. What happened next followed the pattern of all genuine internet phenomena. The creatures began to appear on trading cards. People collected them, shared them, debated the rankings of various brainrot beings. Which was stronger, Tralalero Tralala or Bombardiro Crocodilo? These were earnest conversations conducted with the mock seriousness that is a hallmark of internet culture at its most playful. The cards themselves became objects, real printed cards, not just digital images, turning a meme into something you could hold in your hand. Italian brainrot spread outward from its origins in online short video platforms and found audiences who had never sought it out. Parents encountered it through children who were already fluent in its language. Adults who considered themselves entirely separate from internet culture found themselves recognizing Tralalero Tralala by name. It crossed language barriers with particular ease because the humor was visual and sonic rather than textual. You did not need to understand a joke to feel it. Part of what made it a global moment, rather than a regional quirk, was that it asked so little of the viewer. You did not need context. You did not need to have followed the story from the beginning. You could arrive midstream, encounter a shark in sneakers for the first time, and immediately understand that you were in the presence of something that had no intention of making sense and was entirely at peace with that. There is something worth pausing on here. Italian Brainrot was almost entirely generated by artificial intelligence, the images, the voiceovers, the aesthetic. And yet it did not feel cold or mechanical. It felt warm. It felt playful. The human hand in it was not in the creation of individual frames, but in the curation, the naming, the decision to release this particular shark into the world on this particular Tuesday. The creativity was in the arrangement, the framing, the choice of which absurdity to amplify. The creatures of Italian Brainrot were, in a sense, collaborative. Humans dreamed them up in broad strokes. A shark, but with shoes, and machines gave them form. The result was something neither could have produced alone, and audiences responded not with suspicion but with delight. By the middle of 2025, the phenomenon had already begun its natural transformation. New characters were added, older ones faded slightly, fan-made variations multiplied. The original wave crested and softened into the general current of internet culture, where it will no doubt surface again, periodically, whenever someone encounters Tralalero Tralala for the first time and feels that particular quiet joy of meeting something completely without purpose. Of course, Italian Brainrot was not the first time the internet had organized itself around cheerful, collective nonsense. That tradition runs deeper, and its roots are stranger than you might expect. There is an older, longer-running series that helped seed the soil for exactly this kind of cultural moment, one that has been producing its own brand of surreal loyalty since 2023, following a cast of characters so unlikely that they make a shark in sneakers seem almost restrained. In February of 2023, a Georgian animator named Alexei Gerasimov uploaded a short video to YouTube. It was strange, genuinely, almost defiantly strange. Human heads emerged from the tanks of toilets, singing a fragment of a song by the Black Eyed Peas. Camera-headed humanoid figures chased them. There was no explanation. There was no setup. There was no resolution that would have satisfied anyone looking for one. It was simply a thing that existed, fully formed and completely bewildering, in the way that the most interesting internet artifacts tend to be. He called it Skibidi Toilet. The series grew. Gerasimov kept uploading. The lore deepened in ways that defied easy summary. Battles, factions, increasingly elaborate sequences involving camera heads and speaker heads and television-headed entities locked in an ongoing war against the toilet-dwelling creatures. Each episode was short. Many were only 30 seconds or a minute long. But the cumulative universe they built was dense and ongoing, and to the right audience entirely absorbing. That audience, it turned out, was almost entirely children. Specifically, the children we now call Generation Alpha, those born from roughly 2010 onward, the first generation to have grown up not just alongside smartphones, but inside them from the very beginning. For these children, Skibidi Toilet was not fringe content. It was not a curiosity. It was simply part of the landscape of childhood, as naturally present as the playground or the lunchroom. And out of this, almost as a byproduct, came something linguistically interesting. The word Skibidi began to detach itself from the videos. It began to migrate. Children started using it the way previous generations had used words like cool or radical or sick as a free-floating term of approval, of energy, of belonging. Skibidi could mean something good, it could mean something chaotic. It could mean that you understood the reference, which was perhaps the most important thing of all. Language scholars and cultural observers began to take note. Skibidi was not just a piece of slang. It was, by most accounts, the first slang term that belonged exclusively to Generation Alpha, not borrowed from older internet culture, not adapted from a term that had filtered down from millennials or Gen Z. It was theirs, generated within their own ecosystem, spread through their own channels, incomprehensible to most adults in a way that felt intentional even when it was not. This is worth sitting with for a moment. Every generation produces its own language. This is not new. Teenagers have always spoken in ways designed partly to confuse the adults around them, to draw a ring around their own group, to signal that they share a world that others do not fully inhabit. The slang changes. The function stays the same. There is something almost poetic about the way language works like this. A quiet, continuous act of self-definition, generation after generation. But what is interesting about Skibidi is where it came from. It did not emerge from music, which has historically been one of the great engines of youth slang. It did not come from sport or from a particular subculture with a defined geography and set of practices. It came from a short animated series about toilets made by one person, uploaded freely to YouTube, and consumed in fragments by children who often watched it on tablets while their parents were in the other room. The medium had changed, and with it, the mechanism by which a shared vocabulary could form. Think of it this way. In earlier generations, shared slang required shared physical space. The same school, the same neighborhood, the same radio station. Words drifted slowly, carried by people who moved, by songs that traveled, by television programs that aired in different cities. The spread was real but gradual, and it left traces you could follow. Skibidi had none of those constraints. The internet does not have regions. A child in Manchester and a child in Manila and a child in Melbourne could all watch the same episode within hours of it being posted, and they could all carry the same word into their daily lives, recognizing it in each other without ever having shared a physical space. The shared vocabulary no longer required a shared place. It only required a shared screen. Gerasimov, for his part, became enormously successful. By the end of 2023, Skibidi Toilet had accumulated billions of views. There was merchandise. There were fan wikis of considerable depth and seriousness. There were children who could explain the lore in meticulous detail, who had opinions about factions and character arcs, who had formed genuine attachments to a universe that had been created by a single animator in the space of months. And the adults around them, by and large, did not really understand it. Not in the way the children understood it. They could look it up, they could watch an episode, they could read an explanation. But the felt sense of it, the organic lived understanding that comes from having been there when it spread, from having traded the word Skibidi with other children who already knew what it meant, that was not available to them. You could not acquire it after the fact. You either grew up with it or you did not. This is, in some ways, the oldest story in the world. A generation forms its own symbols, its own references, its own private language. The generation before them looks on mildly baffled, vaguely charmed, occasionally nostalgic for their own version of the same thing. The wheel turns, the slang changes, the need to belong to something, to speak the words that mark you as an insider, stays exactly where it has always been. Slang at its root is a kind of password. It tells the person you're speaking to that you have been to the same place, seen the same things, laughed at the same absurdities. It is a quiet signal exchanged between people who belong to the same online village, however scattered and invisible the borders of that village might be. There is a particular feeling that comes with being in on a joke, not just laughing at something funny, but recognizing a reference at the precise moment it lands, feeling the small interior click of understanding and knowing, without it being said, that the person who made the reference knows you understood it. It is one of the quieter pleasures of social life. A little flicker of recognition between two people that says, without words, we have been in the same places. We have seen the same things. We are, in some small but real way, the same kind of person. Brainrot does this constantly. That is arguably one of its deepest functions, not just to entertain, not just to fill a few idle minutes, but to build and maintain the invisible architecture of belonging. Sociologists and linguists have a term for this. They call it in-group signaling. The idea is that every social group, whether it is defined by geography, age, profession, hobby, or shared experience, develops a kind of private language, a set of references, phrases, rhythms of speech that mark membership. To use those phrases fluently is to announce your membership without a formal introduction. To miss them entirely is to find yourself standing just slightly outside the conversation, unsure of what you have not caught. Think of the shorthand of any specialized field, where a single word can carry a weight of shared context that would take paragraphs to explain to an outsider. Or think of families with their private jokes that trace back to a holiday 10 years ago, a misheard phrase, a moment that became legend. These are not simply efficient ways of communicating, they are rituals of recognition. Every time you use the phrase, you remember who you are to each other. Brainrot vocabulary works in exactly this way. When someone quotes a particular sound, a particular character, a particular absurd line that circulated across a platform for a week, they are not just being silly. They are testing the air. They are saying softly, "Are you there too?" And when someone responds, when the reference lands, when the other person smiles or finishes the phrase, something real has passed between them. Not information, exactly. Something more like warmth. A small confirmation that the world you have been moving through is shared. This is not a new phenomenon. It only looks new because the specific vocabulary is recent. Every generation has had its version of this. The slang of any decade, the phrases that feel impossibly alive in their moment and impossibly dated 20 years later, has always served this dual purpose. It communicates, yes, but it also signals. It says, "I am from here, I am from now. I am one of you." There is a lovely continuity in this. If you look at it from enough of a distance, the teenagers of the 1960s had their phrases. The young people of the 80s had theirs. The 90s carried its own private lexicon, its own set of cultural touchstones that felt entirely obvious to anyone who had been paying attention and entirely opaque to anyone who had not. What changes is the speed at which this vocabulary forms and the scale at which it spreads. What stays the same is the underlying hunger it serves. People want to belong. People want to be recognized. Language has always been one of the most elegant tools for both. What is interesting about internet brainrot specifically is the geography of the belonging it creates. In earlier generations, slang was largely regional. The phrases your school used were not necessarily the phrases used 3 towns over. The community defined by shared vocabulary was, of necessity, a local one. But brainrot crosses those lines entirely. A reference that becomes a meme on a platform can be recognized almost simultaneously by people on different continents who have never met and likely never will. The community it creates is not defined by place. It is defined purely by attention, by having been in the same corner of the internet at the same time. This creates a kind of belonging that is genuinely new in human history, diffused, distributed, and yet strangely real. People who share nothing else, not location, not age, not background, can find themselves in the same joke, laughing at the same strange image, recognizing the same absurd phrase. And in that moment, something is built, not a deep community, not necessarily a lasting one, but something, a thread. A small, warm, briefly shared sense of being seen. There is also, of course, the other side of this. In-groups imply out-groups. The same vocabulary that signals membership also, by its nature, marks the boundary of who does not belong. This is true of all slang, all specialized language, all private codes. It can exclude as easily as it includes. To be on the wrong side of the reference, to ask what that means and see the slight pause before someone explains it is its own social experience, not a pleasant one. But perhaps what matters most is the direction of the gesture. When someone uses a Brainrot reference, they are rarely doing so to exclude. The more common impulse is the opposite, an almost hopeful casting outward, a small offering, a quiet hope that someone will catch it. The goal is connection. The possibility of exclusion is a side effect, not an intent. And so we find that even in the strangest corners of internet culture, even in the most deliberately nonsensical vocabulary, the oldest human impulse is quietly at work. The desire to find your people, to be known, to say something that only certain ears will hear, and to feel the warmth that comes when those ears are in the room. Fluency in Brainrot, it turns out, is not so different from fluency in any other shared language. It is a way of telling the world, I have been paying attention to the same things you have. And in that attentiveness, however accidental or strange its object, there is a kind of kinship. That kinship, as we will see, carries a quiet weight, one that extends beyond laughter and belonging into something that helps us make sense of a world that often feels like too much to hold. There is a phrase people say online, usually in a tired, half-smiling sort of way. They say, sorry, I have brain rot, and then they share something, a looping animal video, a sentence that makes no grammatical sense but somehow captures a feeling, an image that exists in no logical universe and yet lands perfectly. And everyone who sees it understands. They laugh. They feel a little lighter. On the surface, this looks like self-deprecation, like someone poking fun at their own attention span, their own inability to focus on serious things. But if you listen more carefully, there is something else happening beneath that gentle joke. Something that deserves a moment of quiet attention. Humans have always used laughter as a tool, not just for entertainment, but for survival. When life becomes too loud, too uncertain, too layered with small daily pressures, the nervous system needs somewhere to put all of that weight. And sometimes the only way to carry something heavy is to laugh at it, not to dismiss it, not to pretend it does not exist, but to hold it at a slight angle where the light catches it differently. Absurdist humor does this beautifully. When the content you are watching is so deliberately senseless, so playfully untethered from logic or consequence, it gives your mind a kind of holiday. The usual machinery of worry, the tracking of problems, the planning, the replaying of conversations that already happened, all of that quiets down. Because the brain cannot simultaneously pass pure nonsense and continue to fret about the electricity bill or tomorrow's difficult conversation. One tends to crowd out the other. Think of it like this. Imagine you have been carrying a heavy bag all day. Every serious piece of content you consume adds another small stone to that bag. News, tasks, expectations, social complexity, each one settles in. By the end of the day, the bag is significant. And then you watch a video of a cat discovering a cardboard box for the first time. And the cat is deeply suspicious of the box, and someone has added dramatic orchestral music, and there are subtitles treating the whole event with the gravity of a Shakespearean tragedy, and you laugh quietly in the soft light of your room. And for just a moment, you put the bag down. Saying "I have brainrot" is, in its own small way, a kind of self-recognition. It is an acknowledgement that your mind is full. That you have been bombarded with more stimulation than any single brain was probably designed to hold. And you have found a gentle, harmless exit. There is honesty in it. A willingness to admit that you are not a machine, that you need release, that you have reached quite reasonably for something soft and silly. This is also a profoundly social act. The sharing of absurd content is rarely done in isolation. It is passed between friends, dropped into group chats, replayed during phone calls. It functions as a shared language for the experience of being overwhelmed without having to articulate the overwhelm directly. When you send someone a clip that makes no sense and they reply with nothing but a series of laughing faces, something real has been communicated, a kind of wordless solidarity. We are both tired. We are both finding this funny. We are both, for this moment, okay, chronic low-level stress, the kind that does not announce itself dramatically but simply hums underneath everyday life, is a particular feature of the modern experience. It accumulates not through catastrophe, but through accumulation. Too many tabs open, too many choices. Too many things to keep track of, too many updates to absorb. The world has become extraordinarily generous with information, and the human nervous system has not quite caught up to that generosity. Absurdist content, then, is not a symptom of weakness or mental laziness. It is closer to a pressure valve, a way the mind discovers, often instinctively, to release tension without requiring effort, preparation, or even full consciousness. You do not have to think your way through a meme the way you might think your way through a difficult emotion. You simply receive it, and the response, the smile, the small exhale, the momentary loosening of something held tight comes on its own. There is a philosophical tradition, actually, that treats nonsense and absurdity as deeply meaningful forms of resistance. The idea that when the world insists on seriousness, on productivity, on constant purposeful motion, choosing to spend a few minutes watching something completely ridiculous is a quiet act of reclaiming something. A small, personal assertion that you are more than your obligations. Of course, like all things, this works best in balance. Laughter as shelter is real and useful. But even shelter needs a door, a way back out into the open. The relief that comes from brainrot content is genuine, but it is a companion to life, not a replacement for it, a rest stop, not a destination. And perhaps that is the most human thing about it. We have always needed both, the serious and the silly, the meaningful and the meaningless, the weight and the weightlessness. What changes across generations is only ever the medium, the format the nonsense takes, the platform where it lives. The underlying need has always been there, warm and constant, and very, very old. When someone laughs at something that makes no sense and says, "Haha, brain rot," they are doing something their ancestors did around fires, in taverns, in the margins of illuminated manuscripts where monks drew rabbits jousting with knights. They are finding shelter in the ridiculous. And they are, without quite knowing it, saying, "I am here, I am human, and I needed that." From coping, it is only a small, gentle step to something even softer. The idea of escape and how scrolling can become its own kind of quiet refuge from the weight of the day. You have probably done it without quite noticing. You pick up your phone with no particular intention, not to look something up, not to message anyone, not even to watch something you have been waiting for. You just pick it up. And then, some amount of time later, 10 minutes, maybe 40, maybe longer, you put it down again. And if someone asked you what you had just been looking at, you would have to think hard before answering. Not because the content was forgettable in the ordinary way, but because you were not really watching it at all. You were somewhere else entirely. Or perhaps nowhere at all. This is what people have started calling zombie scrolling. And the name is a good one because it captures something that the more clinical descriptions miss. It is not browsing. It is not watching. It is a kind of motion without direction, a reaching without wanting anything in particular. The eyes move, the thumb moves. The content shifts and changes, but the person behind those eyes is in some meaningful sense, not there. There is a quiet honesty in admitting this, because it does not feel bad in the moment. That is the part that trips people up when they try to understand it. If it felt bad, it would be easier to stop. But zombie scrolling often feels like something close to relief, a loosening. The day has been long, or difficult, or simply relentless in its small demands, and this frictionless, effortless drift through moving images and passing sounds asks absolutely nothing of you. It does not ask you to be present. It does not ask you to remember. It does not ask you to care. And sometimes that emptiness is exactly what it feels like you need. Researchers who study this call it mood modification. Not mood improvement exactly, though sometimes it does that too. Mood modification is broader. It means using an external stimulus to shift your internal state, to turn down the volume on something that is too loud inside you, whether that is anxiety or grief, or simply the accumulated weight of a day that went on a little too long. We do this in all kinds of ways. A warm shower, a walk, a glass of something cold. The difference with scrolling is that it is always available, always immediately accessible, and it requires almost no effort to begin. Think of it like a dimmer switch on a lamp. When the world feels too bright, too sharp, too demanding of your attention, you reach for the switch and you turn things down. The content itself barely matters. What matters is the act of consumption, the steady low hum of input that fills the silence without requiring you to do anything with it. The nonsense content, the absurd loops, the cheerful triviality of Brainrot, it is perfectly suited to this function. It is soft enough to let the mind go slack. It is just interesting enough to hold the eyes without engaging the deeper parts of the brain. It is, in a precise and almost architectural sense, designed to be easy. And there is something genuinely comforting about that. We should be careful here not to moralize too quickly. The need to escape, to pause, to set down the weight of being a thinking and feeling person for a little while, that need is not a weakness. It is not laziness. It is as old as human beings have been human. We have always found ways to step outside our own minds when remaining inside them felt like too much. Stories told around fires, daydreams in the middle of long afternoons. The impulse is the same. Only the method is new. But here's where the honesty part becomes important. Because there is a difference between rest and escape, even though they can look almost identical from the outside. Rest is something the body and mind genuinely recover from. You emerge from it feeling lighter, quieter, more capable of meeting the next thing. Escape is different. Escape is running away from something rather than putting it down, and the thing you ran from has not moved while you were gone. It is still exactly where you left it, waiting patiently on the other side of whatever screen you close when you finally stop. Many people who scroll extensively describe coming out the other side feeling strangely depleted, not rested, not refreshed, more tired than before, in a specific way that is hard to name, a kind of inner flatness, as if something that had been gently buzzing has gone quiet but left a faint ringing in its wake. The mood modification worked, in a narrow sense. The sharp edge of anxiety or exhaustion was blunted, but something else was also used up in the process. Some quality of attention, some capacity for stillness feels slightly thinner than it did before. This is one of the stranger paradoxes of brain rot as a form of escape. It offers relief from effort by replacing it with effortlessness, but effortlessness of a particular kind. Not the effortlessness of genuine rest, of lying still and letting the mind wander where it wants to go, but the effortlessness of passive consumption, of receiving a continuous stream of input without processing or pausing long enough for any of it to actually land. The mind, it seems, needs some resistance to feel rested. Stillness is not the same as numbness. And scrolling, for all its apparent effortlessness, does not quite let the mind release. It keeps a part of it running, just below the surface, watching, registering, half attending to a stream that never stops. And so we find ourselves reaching repeatedly for something that feels like rest and often delivers something that only approximates it. Finding comfort, genuine comfort, in the low hum of nonsense and the quiet drift of a feed, and at the same time emerging from it softer around the edges in ways we did not entirely choose. What that softness does when it accumulates slowly over time is something we have not quite reckoned with yet. There is a particular quality to the way a river reshapes its banks. It does not happen in a single dramatic moment. It happens slowly, incrementally, through the steady and patient movement of water finding the path of least resistance. A little soil here, a gentle curve there. Over months and years, the river looks the same on the surface, but the land beneath it has quietly shifted. That image comes to mind when researchers talk about what happens to attention over time with heavy short-form video consumption. Not a sudden break, not a visible wound. Something quieter, and in some ways more worth understanding. A few years ago, a large review of the scientific literature pulled together the findings from 71 separate studies. Across those studies, the researchers were looking at nearly 100,000 participants. The question at the center of all of it was a straightforward one. What does regular, sustained consumption of short-form video content actually do to how we think, focus, and manage our impulses? The picture that emerged was not alarming in the way a health crisis alarm. It was more like a weather report describing a slow and persistent pressure system. Among people who spent the most time with short-form content, researchers found consistent patterns, attention spans that were measurably shorter, a reduced ability to sit with a task that required sustained effort, impulse control that was, on average, somewhat weaker than in those who consumed less of it. And in younger populations in particular, correlations with academic difficulty that showed up across multiple studies in multiple countries. None of this means that anyone who watches short videos is damaged or cognitively impaired. The science here is about population patterns, about averages, about tendencies across large groups. It does not tell you what is happening in any individual person on any given evening. What it does offer is a kind of landscape-level view, a way of looking at the terrain from above and noticing that the river has been slowly moving. Here's what seems to be happening, as best as the researchers can describe it. The brain is an organ that is exquisitely tuned to novelty. Across millions of years of evolution, new stimuli meant potential danger, or potential food, or potential social information. The nervous system learned to orient toward the new and the unexpected as a matter of survival. Short-form video content, almost by design, delivers novelty at a rate that nothing in our ancestral environment ever did. Every few seconds there is something new. Every swipe is a small reset, a tiny jolt of the orientation response, a fresh signal that something worth attending to is just ahead. Over time, the theory goes, the brain may recalibrate. It begins to expect that novelty will arrive quickly, and it becomes less patient with the stretches in between. Sitting with a single thing, a page of text, a slow-moving conversation, a task that requires 10 or 15 uninterrupted minutes, starts to feel more effortful than it once did. Not impossible, not broken. Just harder, in a way that is difficult to name until you go looking for it. Researchers sometimes describe this as a kind of attentional recalibration. The baseline shifts. What the brain considers a normal rate of incoming stimulation drifts upward, and everything below that new baseline begins to register as slow or dull or demanding in a way that invites distraction. Impulse control follows a similar logic. When the habit of the mind is to follow the next stimulus as soon as the current one loses novelty, the muscle of sitting still and choosing not to follow becomes less practiced. This is not a moral failing, it is closer to a physical one, more like a muscle that has been used less than usual and has softened a little in consequence. The academic correlations in the review are perhaps the most concrete expression of all of this. Students who reported the highest levels of short-form video consumption showed patterns that their teachers and their test scores both reflected. more difficulty with sustained reading, more trouble completing tasks that required holding multiple pieces of information at once, a harder time resisting the pull of other stimuli when they needed to concentrate. Again, these are patterns across populations. But patterns across populations are how we understand what is happening to us collectively, even when individual experiences vary. What the research does not say is that the technology is entirely to blame or that the only solution is complete abstention. The picture is more nuanced and more interesting than that. The brain that reshapes itself under certain conditions is the same brain that can reshape itself back under different ones. Attention is not a fixed quantity. It is more like a habit or a practice, and practices can change. But before we arrive at what might help, it is worth sitting with what the evidence is actually describing. Something is happening to attention. Something is happening to how we handle impulse, how we engage with difficulty, how we experience tasks that ask us to stay with them across time. And if that is changing the texture of waking life, it is worth asking whether it might also be changing other things, the way memory forms, the way mood settles after a long session, the particular kind of tiredness that follows us to bed. That is where we are heading next, into the quieter and more diffuse territory of cognitive load and what accumulates when the mind has been working hard at something it does not always recognize as work. There is a particular kind of tiredness that does not come from doing too much. It does not come from physical exertion or from a long day of hard concentration. It is a tiredness that arrives after you have done, technically, very little. You have been lying down or sitting comfortably, and yet when you finally set your phone on the nightstand and close your eyes, something in you feels wrung out. Not sleepy in a good way, not the warm, settling heaviness of genuine rest arriving. Instead, something thinner and more restless, a flatness, a low-level hum of unease that you cannot quite name. If you have experienced that feeling, it is worth understanding what has actually happened inside your mind, because it is not nothing. It is not just tiredness. It has a shape and a cause and a name, and understanding it, even gently and without judgment, can help you hold it a little more lightly. The cause begins with something called working memory. Think of working memory as the surface of a desk. A well-organized desk has enough clear space to spread things out, to hold several things at once, to work with them in relation to each other. But working memory has limits. It can only hold so much at one time. And when too much arrives too quickly, when items land on the desk faster than they can be examined or filed away, things start to pile up. The desk becomes cluttered, and working with a cluttered desk is exhausting in a way that a tidy one never is. Scrolling does this in a very specific way. Each time the content shifts from a clip about raccoons to a news headline to a cooking video to someone's confession to an advertisement to a dance, your working memory has to reorient. It has to clear what was just there and prepare to receive something entirely new. The old context does not simply vanish. It lingers for a moment, overlapping with the incoming one, creating a kind of cognitive interference. Researchers sometimes call this the cost of task switching, and in laboratory settings, it is measurable and real. Every time the brain pivots, there is a small but genuine expenditure of mental energy, a toll paid at each junction. Now imagine paying that toll not once or twice, but hundreds of times in an hour. Because that is roughly what a sustained scrolling session involves. The topics do not build on each other. There is no thread connecting them. Each one arrives complete and unrelated, demanding its own brief orientation. The brain is not coasting through familiar territory. It is constantly being dropped into a new landscape and asked to get its bearings before the ground shifts again. This is cognitive overload, and the body registers it the same way it registers other forms of strain. There is a creeping heaviness, a narrowing of attention, a growing difficulty in holding a single thought for any length of time. The mind, which has been asked to be nimble for an extended period, becomes paradoxically less nimble. Like a sprinter who has been asked to sprint in short bursts without rest for an hour, the legs still move, but they move less cleanly. The form breaks down. What follows tends to arrive in a cluster. There is often a low-grade anxiety, not about anything specific, but a generalized unsettledness. The feeling that something has been left undone or missed, or that the world is moving faster than you can quite keep up with. There is sometimes a flattening of mood, a muted quality to things, as though the ordinary pleasures of the room around you have lost a little of their color. And there is almost always some disruption to sleep, that thinner, more restless quality I described at the beginning, the difficulty of actually letting the mind settle into quiet. There is also the particular ache of what gets called FOMO, the fear of missing out. It deserves its own gentle mention here, because it is so woven into the experience of scrolling. The feed never ends. There is always more, and the algorithm, which is designed with genuine sophistication to surface things that feel relevant and important and urgent, creates a persistent low-level conviction that stopping means missing something, so you scroll a little further. And a little further after that, each pause produces a small pull back toward the stream. And the cost of that pull, the anxiety of incompleteness, the sense that the world is a document you will never finish reading, accumulates quietly like dust. None of this means that you have done something wrong. It is worth saying that plainly. The brain that struggles after a long scroll is doing exactly what brains do, responding to an environment it was not entirely built for, the way a body might ache in a chair designed without any thought for the spine. The chair is the problem, not the spine. Knowing this changes the quality of the feeling, even when it cannot immediately change the feeling itself. The tiredness is real. The low mood is real. The sleep disruption is real, but they are effects of something understood, not signs of something wrong with you. You have spent time in a cognitively demanding environment, and your working memory has been taxed. The desk is cluttered. Given time, given quiet, it will clear. And there is something almost interesting in that. The same restless intelligence that finds the scroll so compelling, the part drawn to novelty, to connection, to the quick recognition of pattern and surprise, that very same intelligence is what gets so thoroughly worn down by it. The more curious the mind, the higher the toll. That irony deepens considerably when you consider where the research has been heading lately, because it turns out that the question of what scrolling does to a mind is not one that researchers have been asking only about human minds. There is a strange kind of comfort in discovering that you are not alone in something, even when what you have discovered is a flaw. And there is a stranger comfort still in finding that the flaw is not entirely your fault, that something in the structure of your environment shaped it, quietly, over time, without your noticing. Recently, researchers began asking a question that sounds almost whimsical until you sit with it for a moment. What happens to a mind? Not a human mind, but a machine mind, when it is trained on junk. Large language models, the kind of artificial intelligence that can hold a conversation, summarize a document, write a paragraph, are built on language, vast, almost incomprehensible quantities of it. Every sentence the model has ever learned from, every scrap of text it absorbed during training, shaped the way it now thinks, the way it reasons, the way it holds a thought from one moment to the next. A preprint study that circulated among researchers explored what happens when those training datasets contain significant proportions of low-quality social media text. The kind of writing that drifts, that contradicts itself, that follows the logic of engagement rather than the logic of thought. Fragmented, reactive, optimized not for clarity, but for the dopamine of the scroll. What the researchers found was, depending on your perspective, either deeply unsettling or quietly illuminating. Models trained on heavier proportions of this material showed measurable degradation, not in their ability to produce fluent-sounding sentences, they could still do that, but in something more subtle, reasoning consistency. The ability to hold a logical thread across several steps without dropping it. The capacity to arrive at the same conclusion twice when given the same problem. These things weakened. And more troublingly, the effects did not simply vanish when better data was later introduced, they lingered, like a tint in glass that no amount of polishing quite removes. The metaphor that comes to mind is soil. Imagine you have a garden, and for several seasons you have been feeding it with something that looks like nourishment, but is mostly filler. It provides enough for growth to continue, but not the minerals that allow deep roots, not the structure that helps the soil retain what it needs. Eventually, you add good compost, rich and dark. The garden improves, but the earlier depletion does not simply reverse. The soil remembers what it was fed. Minds, all kinds of minds it seems, may work a little like this. Now, a machine is not a person. The parallel has limits, and it is worth holding those limits gently. A language model does not suffer. It does not lie awake with a feeling of scattered attention, aware that something has shifted in the quality of its thinking. It does not browse videos at 2 in the morning and then wonder why the next morning feels thin and grey at the edges. It simply processes, and what it was trained on shapes what it can do, but the structural echo is real, and it is worth sitting with. When we talk about brain rot in human experience, there is often an implied judgment that the person who consumes too much low-quality content has made a series of small, lazy choices. That it is a matter of discipline, of willpower, of simply choosing better. And there is some truth in that framing. But the machine parallel suggests a different, more structural reading. The model does not choose what it is trained on. It receives its environment and is shaped by it. And when that environment is noisy, fragmented, logically inconsistent, optimized for attention rather than depth, the model that emerges reflects that. Not because it failed to resist, but because that is simply what training on an environment does. The environment becomes in some measure the mind. Humans are not so different. We are also, in the most literal sense, trained on our inputs. Every hour spent in a particular information environment is, in a quiet way, an hour of training. The patterns we encounter most often become the patterns our minds reach for. The rhythm of the scroll, the interrupted thought, the headline without the article, these are not neutral experiences. They are lessons. And minds, like models, absorb lessons whether they intend to or not. This is not cause for despair. It is cause for a particular kind of gentleness with yourself. If you have noticed that your attention has changed, that long reading feels harder than it once did, that silence feels oddly uncomfortable, that your thoughts seem to skip more than they once used to, you are not observing a moral failure. You are observing the predictable outcome of an environment that was, in some ways, not designed with your flourishing in mind. You were trained, slowly and without ceremony, by the feeds and the notifications, and the endless novelty. And just as the researchers found that introducing better inputs could improve a model's function, even if the recovery was incomplete, even if the effects of the earlier training did not fully dissolve, there is reason to believe the same is true for us. Attention is not fixed. Minds are not static. The quality of what we feed ourselves over time has consequences, and changing what we feed ourselves over time also has consequences. There is something almost quietly hopeful in the machine parallel if you read it that way. Not a condemnation of the distracted mind, but a map of how it got there, and a suggestion that the road runs in both directions. And perhaps that is the most important thing to carry forward as we near the end of this journey. Brain rot is not a flaw in the person. It is a response to a particular kind of world, which means the question worth sitting with in the slow space before sleep is simply this: what are you choosing to fill that world with, one quiet evening at a time? There is something that happens when people learn about all of this. The dopamine loops, the scroll mechanics, the way platforms are designed to keep the eye moving and the finger swiping. There is a moment sometimes where a quiet guilt slips in. A thought along the lines of, I should be stronger than this. I should have more willpower. I should be able to simply put the phone down. If that thought has visited you, I would like to offer something in return. Not an excuse exactly, more like a correction, a gentle reframing of what is actually happening when you find yourself pulled toward the soft glow of a screen, watching a shark in sneakers, or a looping video of rain on a window, or a dozen short clips that blur together into a pleasant, wordless haze. What is happening is not weakness, it is collision. The collision between a very old brain and a very new environment. Think of it this way: your brain was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years. Its deepest instincts were calibrated for a world that moved slowly, where novelty was rare and therefore precious, where a flash of motion at the edge of vision genuinely mattered, where social connection was a matter of survival and not just comfort. The brain you carry into this century was built by ancestors who had no phones, no screens, no feeds, no algorithms. It was built for a world with a very different texture than the one you wake up inside of every morning. Now take that ancient, beautifully tuned instrument, your attention, your reward system, your hunger for connection and novelty, and place it in front of something that was engineered by some of the most sophisticated technology in human history to do one thing above all others: to keep it engaged. The platforms that serve content did not arrive accidentally at the designs they use. They arrived through years of testing, iteration, refinement. They have studied what the human eye lingers on, what makes a finger pause, what emotional tone produces another tap, another view, another scroll. They have optimized for engagement the way a lock is shaped to fit a specific key, and your brain is that key. Understanding this does not make the pull disappear. It does not suddenly make it easy to close an app that is working hard to stay open. But it does change the story you tell yourself about why it is hard. The story is not, "I have no willpower." The story is, "I am a human animal, meeting something that was designed specifically and carefully to be difficult to resist." That is a very different kind of story. It carries less shame. It creates more room to breathe. Now, this is especially important to hold gently when thinking about younger people. Children and teenagers are not simply small adults navigating the same landscape with smaller hands. Their brains are actively developing the very circuits that govern impulse control, long-term thinking, and the ability to step back from an immediate reward are still being constructed during adolescence. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for so much of what we call self-regulation, is not fully mature until the mid-20s. This is not a flaw in the design. It is simply where young people are in the long, slow process of becoming. What this means is that a teenager who cannot easily pull away from a feed is not a teenager who lacks character. They are a teenager with a developing brain encountering a system that was not designed with developing brains in mind. The vulnerability is real, and it deserves not criticism but understanding and care and patience, both from the adults around them and, gently, from themselves. For adults, the situation is different in degree but similar in kind. Even a fully mature brain did not evolve to resist what current technology is capable of deploying. There is no ancestral wisdom in your nervous system that prepared it for infinite scroll. There is no deep instinct that says, "This feed will never end, so you may safely stop." The brain keeps scanning because scanning, historically, had a conclusion. It found what it needed, and then it rested. The modern feed offers no such conclusion. It is designed without one. So when exhaustion comes, and it does come, that particular tiredness that is not quite physical, the feeling of having consumed without being nourished, that exhaustion is information, not failure. It is the brain reporting back on an experience that did not match what it was built to receive. It sought signal. It found noise. It kept searching anyway, because the noise was shaped to resemble signal closely enough. This does not mean the content itself is without value. Some of what finds you in those late-night scrolling hours is genuinely funny, genuinely beautiful, genuinely connecting. Brainrot, as we have explored throughout this long, quiet conversation, is not merely emptiness dressed up as stimulation. There is comfort in it, warmth in it, sometimes even a strange kind of meaning in the shared, collective embrace of something that makes no sense at all. But the kindness that is available to you, the gentleness you can extend to yourself, is to understand that your relationship with this content is not a referendum on who you are. You are not falling short of some standard of discipline that other people are quietly meeting. You are human in a human body with a human brain, doing your best in a world that is changing faster than evolution can track. The science does not judge, it simply describes, and what it describes is a brain trying hard to do what brains have always done: find connection, find novelty, find rest in a landscape that is entirely new. That description leaves room for something other than self-reproach. It leaves room for curiosity and choice, and it leaves room for exactly what we are doing right now, stepping gently back from the noise, letting the breath slow, and allowing the busy mind to drift towards something quieter. The threads of this evening are beginning to gather now, settling into something softer, and there is just a little more to say before we let the night grow still. And so we have come very gently to the end. You have traveled a long way tonight through the quiet corridors of the brain and the brightly lit hallways of the internet, and now both of those places feel a little further away. The room around you is close and still. The sounds of the day have dimmed, and whatever it was you watched before you closed your eyes, the loop, the absurd image, the thing that made no particular sense but held your attention anyway, it has done its work and let you go. We began with a feeling that most of us know but rarely name, the feeling of watching something completely undemanding for longer than we intended, and finding, somewhere beneath the mild guilt, a kind of relief. We did not start by judging that feeling. We started by wondering what it was made of. We followed it toward the science underneath. Dopamine, that patient, ancient signal, does not reward the destination so much as it rewards the sense that something might be coming. Every cut, every loop, every sudden pivot in a short video is a small pulse of that signal, a soft reminder that the next moment might contain something worth seeing. The brain cannot quite tell the difference between genuine possibility and the well-designed appearance of it. It responds the same way. It leans forward again and again without needing to know why. The platforms built around this knowledge are not passive containers. They are environments shaped down to the smallest detail, calibrated to keep you present. Understanding that does not make you immune to it, but it does change what it feels like to be inside it. Knowledge, even gentle knowledge, changes the texture of an experience. You are no longer simply carried along. You are someone who knows the current is there. We spent time with absurdity, with sharks in sneakers and creatures that are both an airplane and a crocodile, with nonsense names that feel like music. Absurdity, it turns out, is its own kind of language. It is the language of people who agree, without saying so, that seriousness is optional, that the rules can be set aside for a moment, that it is possible to share something meaningless and feel closer because of it. Belonging came up again and again in different forms. The comment left at 2 in the morning, the reference recognized across a distance. The feeling of arriving at a piece of content and knowing from the shape of the thing that you were among people who would understand it the same way you did. Small recognitions are not small, they accumulate. They become the feeling of being known. We sat with escape and tried to hold it without judgment, the wanting to step sideways out of the day, out of the weight of it, into something lighter. That is not a weakness, it is something closer to maintenance. The self that watches absurd loops for 20 minutes before sleep is not abandoning its responsibilities. It is tending in its own wordless way to its own need for softness. And we noticed, before this ending, what years of short content have quietly done to the way we move through time. The way a long paragraph can feel like an obstacle, the way silence can feel like something is missing. We named it not to mourn it, but because naming things is the first step toward having a relationship with them, rather than simply being inside them. Because understanding why we love a thing changes how we love it, not less, not more guiltily, just more consciously, which is a softer and more spacious way to hold anything. You can love the loop and know the loop is designed to be loved. Both things are true. They can sit beside each other. You know more now than you did when you pressed play. You carry that knowledge lightly because it was given lightly. It was not meant to be a burden. It was meant to be a lantern, small, warm, just enough light to see a few feet in any direction. The room is quiet. The day is behind you. Whatever loops were still playing somewhere in the back of your mind have slowed. You understand a little more about why they called to you, and that understanding is enough. You can let them go now. Rest.